What's up, guys? It's JZNES back again with another video. Today we're here talking about Silent Hill 3. Um, and so, yeah, the sequel to Silent Hill 2, of which I reviewed last time. So here we are, Silent Hill 3. I finally beat it all these years later. Really more like a sequel to the original game here in terms of story and characters and whatnot. As of the second Silent Hill game, it almost felt more like an anthology thing that like surrounded Silent Hill, the town there. But as of 3, it's more about the same characters and whatnot. And as of the rest of the games, I think they just kind of continue on in their own thing again and make it sort of an anthology thing. So, yeah, I have some notes here. That's what I was grabbing. That I want to talk about here in a little bit. But generally, overall, this game is, I think, a big improvement on Silent Hill 2. And, is this all like copywritten music? What the fuck? Come on. Okay, come on. Just want some spooky music in the background. Big improvement on Silent Hill 2 in a lot of ways. I think that the gameplay definitely was improved, and the atmosphere is definitely back to where it needs to be. Again, I think I mentioned that in my Silent Hill 2 video, but this game certainly had a great amount of atmosphere and more closely resembled the first game in terms of having things like the other world, again, in full force, and the fog and stuff like that. It really felt a lot like the first game, but also it really felt a lot like the second game in a lot of ways too. It's kind of the best best of both worlds there. To what is this? There's always talking. It's always talking. What's going on here? Is there not songs? There's songs, right? I know there were songs. I was in the game. It was good. All right. So, watch this. This is going to be a song. I bet you. But yeah, it kind of comes back to that Silent Hill 1 in terms of atmosphere and sound design, really. Definitely in terms of horror, the game was a lot scarier than Silent Hill 2, which was kind of a problem I had with that game. It wasn't that scary. I think this game definitely had a lot more of that, and especially the way I was trying to play through it. Although I was doing that in the second Silent Hill too, so I don't, all three of them really, so no, I think this game just has better, like, enemies and better sound design for sure. This game might be the top notch of all three of them in terms of sound design, but yeah, I was really impressed by that. They really got down making the monster noises really scary again and like really tense, and just the overall background music, which we haven't even heard yet for whatever reason, was really like really horror centric and whatnot, and definitely made it feel more like a horror game again, which I definitely appreciated. But especially the monster design, in terms of the sound and whatnot. The pendulum monsters have like the fucking freakiest sound. Every time I would hear those guys, I just like it would build tension, or you can hear all the enemies kind of from afar, and you kind of know which one it is and that kind of stuff. It's a lot like the first game in terms of that, where in the first game they did a lot of that, and I thought that was really well done here again. They went back to something that worked, I feel like, that was kind of missing from the second game there. So I feel like that's a big positive in the direction of Silent Hill 3 here. In terms of like gameplay and stuff, I think the controls were improved a little bit. The movement and stuff feels like maybe a little bit better, but it's still kind of that same sort of movement and stuff, but a little bit better. The one thing that bothered me about like the movement controls and whatnot is there's a new lock-on, or maybe they had this in the past game, but it didn't bother me that much in that one. But like, if you hit X, the same button that you're supposed to be hitting to open doors and do stuff like that and investigate stuff, it'll turn towards an enemy so that you can be locked onto them and shoot them. Like, great, that's a great feature, but why put that on the X button, the same button that investigates things? It's terrible button mapping right there. Use any other fucking button. I don't know, use anything. I mean, there were so many other buttons that you could have used. Granted, most of them get used for other things, but I don't know. Figure it out. Any button's better than X for sure. So I didn't like that much. That actually kind of tripped me up on when I was trying to go through some doors. A few times I would get hit by enemies, and that would be kind of frustrating. And I'd have to like reorient myself to be looking at the door. And even then, if I was looking at the door, a lot of times I'd lock onto the enemy that was kind of near the door. And so it was just kind of that was probably the biggest problem in the entire game, which was just like a minor thing that only happened to me a few times, where it was like slightly frustrating, you know? Now, I don't think the characters and all of that were quite as like story, well developed or whatever as in 2. Like, they really tried to do some stuff in 2, and I thought that was pretty cool. But I do like the characters here. The dialogue feels a little awkward again sometimes. It's kind of strange. It feels like alright, but like, again, it's just kind of like the weird way the delivery happens, or like because there's animations on the faces and stuff now, it just looks slightly odd or something like that. For some reason in the first game it worked pretty well, and then like anytime after that it just looks really awkward, or it feels really awkward for some reason. But it sounded fine. It still was fine. A lot of the dialogue was kind of just stuff that it wasn't really, it didn't really mean a whole lot in terms of anything. All this stuff about Heather and her story, Heather, the main character, the character you play as in this game here, that was all great, and I liked all that. But there was a lot of that, you know, prophecy babble, kind of like there was in the first game, where it's just like, yeah, okay, like, can we move this along a little bit? Like, I don't care. And even Heather in the game is like, I don't believe any of this crap, and I don't even want to hear about any of this. Like shut up or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, she gets it. So like, you know, you're kind of just caught in the middle of this because I guess spoilers for Silent Hill 3, like for reals. But I mean, and Silent Hill 1, I guess. But you're the daughter of Harry Mason from the original game there. And there's actually a really cool part when you're at the amusement park later in the game, and you go to the same spot you were as Harry, and it's one of the save spots where you write on the notepad or whatever, and you can actually see like some of the dialogue from the original game that he was like thinking to himself at the time, and it's all written down there. And then like she gets to read that later, and it's like she knows that it was like 17 years later. There's also a funny thing in the amusement park there where you like go up to this like cage thing, and there's like a dead body in there. It says, oh yeah, there's a dead body in there. Oh, nothing interesting to see there, you know, nothing to see. So yeah, fucking knew it. It's not important. Anyway, I got a notification about something, but anyway, I mean, they made that really up. Anyway, so yeah, so it was just funny because it was like you know, like, oh, nothing interesting about that. It's just like, I mean, I guess at that point, yeah, there really would have been nothing interesting about that, but, like, it's just funny. It's a funny line to me. It's like, yeah, nothing interesting about that. You know, like, this dead body in the thing. Okay, cool, let's move on. You know, like, I just thought it was pretty funny. I think okay, so, wait, what was I talking? Yeah, the characters and stuff. So, all the stuff to do with Heather and all of that, like, that's great. But, like, the side characters, like Claudia and, like, Vincent, I couldn't even think of his name. Vincent. Douglas is pretty alright. I liked him. I liked him and Heather's thing, like, you know, later on in the story and whatnot. So, I think that's pretty cool. But I definitely do think that the characters were slightly weaker than the second game. But I still... It was just mainly the prophecy babble sort of characters that were kind of weak. What I do like is some of the theming. Now, it gets into some like areas, and this is a lot of like kind of background theming. But if you're reading like all the auxiliary material as you're going along, like the diaries in the hospital or whatnot, you'll get a lot of this sense of like what's going on with that. Now, something that I noticed, and I don't think this is an accident, and I think this actually helped a lot with the horror of the game. But one of the things, and I mentioned this here, um, so yeah, so you're playing as Heather. She's a teenage girl. Like in the last few games, you were just some guy, like whatever, like but I said in the review for the first game, that girl is defenseless or whatever because she's just a little girl. Um, well, okay, so like spoilers, like I said, you are kind of that girl. You are actually Cheryl and Alessa. You're the reincarnation of her or whatever. So technically, you're still that same defenseless girl in a sense. But the thing is, like that. Like, that was just something that I noticed, that the game was kind of trying to put you in this position where you're like, oh, you're a teenager, you're kind of like more helpless in a sense. I'm not trying to be like gender stereotype, like, oh, girls are like more defenseless or something, like, but that's the way the game was kind of trying to portray it, was like there's a lot of predatory people in the world, and teenage girls are often a target of that. And I was like, wow, okay, so we're actually like touching on something like that here. And so there's almost a horror aspect in that itself, in the theming of the design of like kind of some of these background events that are happening. For instance, the first boss is basically a giant penis, just saying. Basically, it's kind of hit on the nose at that point. But before that, you run into Douglas. He's just like this older dude, and he's like, oh, come with me. I just need like an hour or so of your time, and I know about your history. Like, okay, so like in hindsight, he's a nice guy. He was working for Claudia, so there is that. But in hindsight, like, he probably did just want to tell you about that. He is a pretty nice guy. I don't think that he was predatory in any regard. But the game, the way the light that it sets it up in, is that he is like kind of a scary older individual, like. And she's like, oh, my dad told me not to talk to strangers or whatever. So it's kind of, they're kind of like confirming that this is what they were going with here. And there's a lot of stuff like that. Like when you meet Vincent, when you meet basically anybody, it's like you're just kind of, you get that feeling, like this isn't right here, and like, I gotta get out of this situation, kind of thing. Stranger danger, but that's kind of what I just noticed this throughout the game. There's a lot of that kind of stuff, and what really like sells that is, one of the things that really sells that later, is that you see all these journal entries from this random guy in the hospital part when you go to Silent Hill later on, and actually the hospital part is very similar to the hospital part from the second game. But they've like kind of redesigned some like atmosphere stuff, and that's another key thing, is the atmosphere in this game is a lot better. I don't know if I mentioned that yet, but very much better. The other world looks so much more like the Silent Hill 1 other world, and that atmosphere was always the creepiest, and I really appreciated that. But anyway, so there's all these entries about like, oh, Heather, you're so awesome and beautiful and like all this stuff, and you're the savior and all this stuff. Because it's like this whole prophecy thing about how she's carrying the god or whatever, but like this guy's like super in love with her, but you gotta realize, at whatever point that guy was writing that, this was like either just a concept in everyone's head, this girl Heather, and I think that's all he knew her as, because one of the later entries is like, hey, oh, well, I'll meet you soon or something like that. And but he keeps using the name Heather, and so this guy knew about Heather in some capacity, but there's no way, even still, there's no way she was even older than a teenager. She couldn't have been, because these entries were obviously written before the game, and she's like 15 or 16 in this game. So no matter how you slice this is very predatory bullshit. These journal entries, and it's just like really like fucked up shit. It's like, damn, like this this is messed up. Like, so the game was definitely touching on some stuff like that, kind of in the background. They don't really talk about that in the dialogue like too much. It's just kind of like sort of an implied thing. But I think that that's just really interesting that we're touching on themes like that. I mean, they kind of did a little bit of that in the last game, but like I feel like they did a little bit of a lot of things in the last game, and they didn't really go full force into most of them, you know. So yeah, I think that I think that's cool. I liked that. I like that underlying theme there. I think that that adds to the horror. Like I was saying, you are that sort of more vulnerable character there, and I think that's really neat, and I like that. So in that regard, they did one character very well, and maybe like two or something, but like, you know, like the rest of them, it's just like, yeah, they're just like whatever. So, but I did like that. So let's take a look at the notes. So that was good. The monsters, they actually pose a threat. A lot of the monsters are kind of like big and bulky, and a few of them are very macho and manly. There's like this big hulking guy. So the monsters can kind of tie into the theme of the whole vulnerability thing as well. Like in the last few games, it's not like you were really super vulnerable, and especially in the first game, you were fighting little kids and stuff, and not in the school. There wasn't usually like these big enemies or whatever, but in the second game, it was more about, you know, James was trying to deal with his shit, like the nurses and whatnot. But anyway, in this game, it just, you really get that vibe about that. So the monsters were very well designed. I like those. They actually pose a threat. They're intimidating, especially at the beginning of the game when you have virtually no weapons. And there's a whole part for like an hour there or something where you only have like this dinky knife that you're not going to use to fight off a bunch of enemies. Now they do give you stuff like the beef jerky and stuff, but I didn't use any of that because, you know what? I wanted to have that vulnerability and make the game just the slightest bit harder, because it actually made it more intimidating. And I was actually kind of scared there at the beginning. I was actually kind of scared a lot of times throughout the game. And I had a few moments too where I was like, oh yeah, this is kind of where I remember this from when I first played this game. I barely remembered anything about the game, but I did remember the mannequin part, and I got to that part and I'm like, oh shit, this is like midway through the game, and I'm like, oh shit, this is where I got to originally, and then it was only like a few hours later and I beat the game. Because the game is pretty short, it's like a 6-hour game. I think my runtime was like 4.5 hours or something. I'm pretty sure I spent more time in it than that, but like, that's nothing, you know? Like, it's a pretty short game, but I like that. I like that it's short, and it doesn't drag out for super long. Yeah, we talked about the creepy journal entries, more interesting gameplay. Atmosphere and the ambiance was more close to Silent Hill 1. Yep, we talked about all that. Okay. Yeah, I put the sound and the monster ambience was brilliant, equals brilliant. So I really did think it was like very, very well done, especially at the beginning there. I was like just really impressed with the sound design. I think that's really, really good. So yeah. So, like, I just think that overall, it was a more fun and a better game than Silent Hill 2. Not that, you know, we have to super compare them or anything, but I you know, it kind of cuts to me that this is the game that everyone is like, this is the bad one, or not the not as good one, or whatever. So in that sense, it's probably a little bit underrated. So there you go. And I'm sure everyone would say that about the other ones too, like any of the other ones that are actually pretty good, but I don't know about those. We'll see about getting to those when we get to those. The one other thing that I wanted to mention is that most of it's sort of a more linear experience in terms of locations. You know, there's not a lot of like really town exploration stuff, which is something I really did like in the first game. But each dungeon that you go to is a lot of... It's pretty open-ended in a sense. Or there's actually a lot of places to go. So I feel like the second game had a lot of that too. But sometimes the second game was pretty linear. I feel like the second game was probably the best balanced overall in terms of like non-linear dungeons and whatnot, where you could just kind of go a lot of different areas and just like look around. But I think Silent Hill 3 definitely had a good balance of both of them. They're like, it's non-linear, but there's still sort of a direct path as well. So you can kind of go off the beat path, but there's still sort of a direct path. I think it had a nice balance of that, and so I just wanted to mention that that was also pretty good. But maybe at times limiting, especially earlier on in the game. I remember the train station area, which there's a whole thing you don't even have to go and do to go off the beaten path to get the shotgun or whatever. So that's kind of cool that stuff like that's hidden. But there's so many other areas where there wasn't a lot going on in terms of anything. Or there was just like maybe not that much going on there. So there wasn't as many like off the beaten path like collectibles and whatnot like the first two games, especially the first game. You go anywhere in that first game, if you go off the path, there's probably something there. You know, there's probably at least a little thing there, or maybe not always, but a lot of times there was. And then a second game had a little bit of that as well. Not that this game didn't have that, but there was just less of that, I guess, or something, just maybe slightly. But like I said, I still think this is a great game, and I would still say everyone should play this one and not write it off, which I feel like it kind of has been a lot of times. So yeah, I really enjoyed the game. I didn't really know what to expect. I kind of thought maybe it was going to be the low point of the three games, but I was actually pleasantly surprised, and it actually ended up being the second best one so far, in my opinion. And I was just more invested in the story and the characters and whatnot. And Heather's like, even though it was a revenge story, which is kind of hard to get invested in, I felt a little bit of that because of what the reason of revenge was. I guess I still haven't spoiled that yet, so I probably won't spoil that. But and I like all the callbacks to the previous games. I thought that was really neat. It was very Metal Gear Solid 4 in that way, where there was a lot of callbacks to areas and locations and people and stuff from the previous games. Whole parts of that game, whole parts of this game were like the section of town from Silent Hill 2, and then like the areas from Silent Hill 2, and even the hospital was like just basically a recreation from Silent Hill 2. So like, I'm glad that I played Silent Hill 2 to be able to appreciate all of that, you know, in a sense. That got me really giddy when I saw that, when I was like, oh wow, look, we're in the same area. That's neat. I mean, you know, it was more or less an asset reuse, but like, but I like that kind of stuff. It's like, I like when they call back to stuff in games, and I don't think this one was done that bad, so. Yeah, I had a really good time with Silent Hill 3 there. There were some down points, I guess, like maybe near the beginning. I think the last, again, the last half of the game was great, but like maybe like the sewer section was a little like whatever. That's kind of where I stopped the first time, but everything before that was pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I just really enjoyed the game overall. And another thing I liked was that they separated out the items now. So now you have a weapons, items, and a supplies thing. So now you know exactly where, you don't have to scroll through everything. You just, the nice little sections there. That's a big improvement. The save points were very well integrated across the game. Another thing I like is every time you go to a save point, or a lot of times when you go to a save point, Heather would like kind of reflect on some stuff and like be like, oh, it's always like, what's this symbol? Why is it here? You know, this and that. But then it's like this thing, and you get a little insight into her character and stuff there. And I thought that was really neat. So I really liked that. I really liked Silent Hill 3. I'm glad I actually have a physical copy of this one, because this is a great game. Actually, the emulation cleaned it up really well too. The Silent Hill 2 kind of had some issues. Another thing I really liked was that the emulation was pretty much flawless. I didn't have any cutscene issues or anything. The credits didn't play for me for some reason, but like the music did. I don't know. That was like the one thing. I was like shocked how well it emulated, and it looked really, really good too. Like, I was really like stunned by it. Um, so yeah, it was great. You know, I had a good time with it, and I like the atmosphere. The sound design was really good. The reusing of stuff, the calling back to stuff, I guess, was really cool. I like that we wrapped up the storyline from the original game with the whole Heather Mason thing, and like, you know, you being the girl for that Harry picks up at the original, like the end of the original game, and like wrapping that whole storyline up, I think. So this is a nice little bow on the whole Silent Hill thing here. This could be a great end to the series. I know there's more games, but like, yeah, like, cool, man. Like, this is great, you know? The gameplay was much improved on a lot of aspects. So, yeah, just great overall. I'm gonna give the game an 8.8 out of 10. Because I really, really enjoyed it, and I think it's a great horror game, and it actually feels scary, you know? So, I really like that aspect of it. Yeah, really good. Definitely, you know, 2 thumbs up from the NES, the JZNES there. So, we'll see if this video gets up in time for Saturday or not. But if not, probably it'll be up in time for a Halloween at least. So, and I still got to make that update video. So, but anyway, this has been JZNES saying keep it classic. Stick around for more reviews, underrated games. I'll see you guys in the next one. JZ